Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special event organised by the British Union of Spiritist Societies, which is part of the series of talks celebrating the 175th anniversary of the birth of the French Spiritist philosopher Léon Denis. Today, we are joined by Vanessa Anseloni, who will be talking about the Léon Denis book After Death. Now, this event today is being streamed on both YouTube and Facebook by the Irish Spiritist Federation, by Kardec Radio, by Bus, obviously, and by Kardec Group. Now, please remember to give a thumbs up, give a like, subscribe to the channel that you're watching, and let us know what you think of this event. And remember to stick around with us until the very end, because we will be having a Q&A and there will be a few announcements from Bus as well. So let's introduce our guest today. Vanessa is a psychologist and neuroscientist who founded the School of Emotion. She's a fifth-generation spiritist living in America and founded the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, the Spiritist Society of Virginia, and the Spiritist Society of Washington, D.C. Vanessa is also the founder of Kardec Radio, one of the streaming partners of this event, and is currently the editor-in-chief of the Spiritist magazine. Vanessa has also been coordinating an international team of translators for Spiritist books and is co-author of the book New Generation, along with the Brazilian medium and philanthropist Geraldo Franco. Now, the book that Vanessa will be talking about today is very interesting. So if you have any questions for Vanessa, we will have a Q&A at the very end of the session. So remember to send us your questions, your comments, or even just a hello in the chat or comment area of whichever channel you're watching through. But remember, we can only read your comments if you're watching through one of the channels of BUS, the Irish Federation, Kardec Radio, or Kardec Group. Remember to tell us where you're watching from, because it's good to know how far around the world this stream is going. So let's bring on Vanessa. Hello, Vanessa. How are you?
Hello, Adam. Good to be back here with you and the group, the whole group, the British Union of Spiritist Societies, the Ireland Spiritist Federation, Kardec Group, Kardec Radio. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So, what can you tell us about After Death by Léon Denis?
This is a book that really changed lives. And here I have a picture for you. Professor Eurípides Barçanufo. And you may be asking, who is he? Aren't we talking about 175 the years of Léon Denis? Yes, we are. But this book, and I bring the Portuguese version and the English version that we have at hand. Léon Denis wrote this book, and it was published at the beginning of the 20th century. In Brazil at the time, Spiritism was blooming in so many ways. We can't forget that Dr. Bezerra de Menezes, the renowned doctor of the poor, the politician, who in Brazil became a spiritist and also a physician and made a huge difference. He discarnated in the 1900s. And later, Eurípides Barçanufo in Sacramento, Minas Gerais, Brazil, the same state where Chico Xavier was born. He was a very devoted Catholic. He was an intellectual in his city. He also had political roles, though he was an educator. At some point, he comes to know of Spiritism through his uncle. His uncle, in a conversation, said, if you want to know more, here's the book. And I can almost imagine, visualize it, you handing the book to Eurípides Barçanufo. At that time, we used candlelight. He spent the whole night reading this book. after he read it the next day. Euripides Barçanufo, who at first resisted the call of Spiritism, he embraced it in such a way that from there on, we have his legacy, a legacy that reaches us to date. He influenced many Spiritists in Brazil and around the world today. In Chico Xavier's words, Professor Euripides Barçanufo is the most complete medium that has been on earth in Spiritism. Chico Xavier's words. So much so that we have, and I visited the very museum that is there in the city of Sacramento, and his great niece, Alzira Bessa, who is now the coordinator of the college, the first Spiritist college created by Euripides Barçanufo. She showed us in the very handwriting of Euripides Barçanufo his automatic writings as a medium, receiving messages from Mother Mary, even Jesus. Euripides Barçanufo became a Spiritist thanks to this book, to the book After Death. Why? Why this book would change a mind that was brilliant in itself, change the direction of his way of feeling his connection with the Christ, his connection with life, with God, his understanding. He said that when he read it all, it fit so perfectly that he had the answers for everything he was looking for. You and I feel the same, don't we? Yes. The title of the book may seem like, oh, especially during the pandemic, who wants to talk about death, right? But this book is about life. Because what is after death? Life. So when we open the book, we want to, together here, go into a journey with Léon Denis. Léon Denis is the philosopher of Spiritism. He brings to us the continuation of Kardec's works in a way that is somewhat poetic as well. And he's so loving. We'll show you more details in this book. And then when we open the book, we're going to read explanation of the Spiritist doctrine. I know, doctrine in the sense of principles, not dogmas, no imposition. Spiritism doesn't impose anything, does it? It doesn't. So you and I are like, why am I going to read a book like this? Well, when I open a book, I see it's composed of 5 parts. The first part is about beliefs and refutations. He, much like Kardec, he goes over the thought process that we have in other traditions. He doesn't dismiss anything. On the contrary, it's very universal. When we go to the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec, which, by the way, the version by the British Union of Spiritist Society is the best translation we have at hand, and we would really recommend it. Very well done. And in that book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, in its introduction, Kardec talks about the universal control of the Spiritist ideas. Isn't that the feeling that we have when we go through a book by Deepak Chopra, for example? Or we read Thich Nhat Hanh's book, the Buddhist monk who got the Nobel Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. Isn't that the feeling that we have when we read sometimes Louise Hay's books, or books like the Tao of Lao Tzu, and many others? In all these walks, we're going to find since ancient times the foundations for these teachings. And Léon Denis, in the first part of the book, is going to tell us so beautifully that what we were seeing in these other beliefs is what we are compiling here in Spiritism, but in a way that it's no longer scattered here and there. And now we'll open a parenthesis. Many people come and say, Vanessa, you know, I love Spiritism, but you know, I want to talk to people in a more universal way, in a way that everybody is going to feel included. And then I say, and then they ask, what do you think? I say, what I think? You need to read again Spiritism. Because as far as I know, Spiritism is so universal that you can talk to anyone in whatever way and people are going to get it. We don't need to say in any other way because Spiritism did the road work for us. From everything that was spread out in different civilizations since ancient times, as Kardec says in the Gospel according to Spiritism, brought it all together. And it's right here. So much easier. It's a shortcut. And then when you go to these beautiful passages, we see Léon Denis, and I'm opening one here, when he's talking about Egypt, chapter 3, just as a teaser for us. He's talking about the temples, the pyramids, the way they believed about life. And then at some point, talking about the way they saw good and evil. Here comes Léon Denis and says, meditate on this vision. It's just a teaser. You have to go there and see what he's talking about. It encloses the secret of all things. As you learn to understand it, you see its limits expanding because the same organic law rules all the worlds. And then he is disclosing to us from Egypt to Greece, the philosophies, the religious beliefs at the time. For example, love, when you go to Greece. And he says here, love because everything loves. And he is talking about the initiates in Greece, the mystics, reminding us that everything their Spiritism bring, as Kardec said, was not brought by Kardec, was not an invention. He said, I didn't create anything new. I compiled. Léon Denis comes here and develops. When we read the first part of the book After Death by Léon Denis, it's as if we go to another book by Emmanuel, through the medium Chico Xavier named On the Way to the Light, when he goes through the history of humankind from the spiritist perspective, like it's the spiritual angle, telling us the behind the scenes of everything. Léon Denis brought that understanding as a continuation of Kardec's works, and is showing to you and I that our hearts can be at peace. There's no need to be split any longer in terms of what do I believe, because we see many people nowadays splittered in their religious, spiritual belief. They're like, yeah, I believe in Buddhism. I believe in Hinduism, but I love Spiritism. But, you know, there's no conflict. Because at the end of the day, you see everything merging. We see from the Spiritist angle that everything that has been happening since ancient civilizations is part of our history. It's part of our progress spiritually, religiously, intellectually. And now we come at a point when humanity is finally able to reason their faith. Since Kardec in 1857, that was the mark. Humanity no longer should be conflicted about belief and reasoning, faith and the use of their thinking. We finally align it in Léon Denis, in the book After Death, in its first part, in a poetical way, because everything he brings is so soothing. He doesn't bring the hardcore knowledge per se. As we were reading here, he brings the history and at the same time, the main feature in Spiritism, the consolation. We may do a pause because you may be asking, Why do I need consolation? Well, during the pandemic, everybody needs it, right? Either because loved one passed away. I know I too had friends who passed away. And we think we need it, but some other people are like, I need consolation because I can't take it anymore. When is this going to end? And then we want to do things we were so careful about not doing. And we would say, Spiritism say, be resilient, stay put, believe in God. Léon Denis comes back here with us. And as he's talking about, and this is another chapter, India, chapter 2. He goes back to India, one of the main civilizations when we talk about the spirituality of humankind, of all of us, who knows in a previous life, you and I were there, and now we're here. And he says to us that when the sophists asked, and this is a dialogue with Krishna, asked him to explain the nature of God, he answered, only the infinite and space can understand the infinite. Only God can understand God. Léon Denis is not afraid of bringing the universality of the teachings, which, by the way, some spiritists are afraid of doing nowadays. They're like, you're going to talk about Krishna? Well, but as far as we know, in our planet, there is coordination, and these masters came along, coordinated by the master of all masters. They are a team, and we recognize the message everywhere. Léon Denis was such a genius, really ahead of his time, and we would say, like Kardec, he's ahead of our time, because we're still behind. Our humanity is waking up to this. Now we're going to ask you a question, because if we don't feel it, it's to no use just to know, as Jesus said, and it's in the book, The Good News, by Humberto de Campos through Chico Xavier. How many people are in this planet? Incarnates, 7 billion people. Of these 7 billion people, how many came to know of Spiritism? According to Brazilian census, the country that has the largest Spiritist population, second by Colombia, we know that there are millions, a few millions of Spiritists around the world. And then us here, spread it around the world. Of these millions, how many know Spiritism and speak English? I don't know. I can't say if we have more than 1,000. I doubt. I don't know. That's a good question. Not about numbers. We're not worried about numbers, but we're talking about the fact that you and I here, we belong to a very selected group. And I say selected because we chose it, not we were chosen. We chose to be here. You and I came to these teachings, and it's potentially true that it's on your hand. It's in my hand, in your hand, to share so others get to know. Like Kardec influenced Léon Denis. Léon Denis influenced Eurípides Barçanufo. And the story of Eurípides Barçanufo is amazing. It really created the foundation for Spiritism in Brazil in so many ways, and for us in the world. Now it's in our hands. And Léon Denis back then, at the end of the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century, 1905, when he brought the book After Death, he brought to us this acknowledgement that these teachings are spread out. So I no longer need to go here, then, and everywhere and be lost. Oh, what is my religious path? What is my spiritual path? It doesn't matter the name. What matters is that we recognize that Krishna, for example, when he says in chapter 2 of the book After Death, Krishna had the wisdom that came from above. Everything coordinated. And when we move along this, as he says, the secret doctrine, the religions in general, since ancient times, he is going to show us what matches our reasoning in Spiritism and what potentially was just misunderstood by the vocabulary of the time, by the traditions of the time. Sometimes he blinds us. And then he goes on till part 2. I'm skipping it because we have limited time. But when you go to part 2, he starts summarizing the big issues. He's talking to our hearts. He's saying, we need to talk about God. Who is God? It's not who, it's a what. Because God's not an individual, a human, a being. No, God's not a being. God is the source. God is the primary source of all things, good, of course. The supreme intelligence, which means love, because nobody who is truly intelligent is not loving. When we talk about intelligence, not this cold intellectual intelligence, we're talking about something that is unsurpassing. And as Krishna said, God knows everything. We don't know everything. We won't be able until we really evolve and reach another level. And then we'll get to know more about the fact that you and I are co-creators. We belong to a universe. And let's just take a glance at the main issue, reincarnation. That's where Spiritism makes a difference because it clarifies misunderstandings regarding reincarnation. Some people don't want to accept it because they're afraid of reincarnating as an animal, right? Spiritualists, since the beginning, that was one issue for them. They had a hard time. We talked to several spiritualists here in the US, including Tom Cratsley from Lilydale, New York, and they say many people were afraid. But we're not afraid. We're not going to reincarnate as a frog or a snake or a dog or a cat or a rat or a cockroach. It's impossible. Like a software. You cannot install a new one in an old computer that doesn't have capacity. Our spiritual capacity would burn the system. As a neuroscientist, I'd like to share with you that our brain, the human brain, you and I have a very particular development as humans that would not be supported by animals. We're not talking only about the spirit, the physical, what we call phylogenetic evolution. No. We're talking about the spiritual evolution that leads the biological evolution. If the human spirit would reincarnate in the body of an animal, it would be impossible. Because the spiritual body that is enveloping the human spirit already has all the development in the nervous system, in the spiritual body that we call perispirit, that would not allow us to connect with a system. It's as if the computer is less potent. It doesn't work. So fundamentally, rationally, impossible. Okay? Yes, Les Smith is saying, we don't incarnate lesser than ourselves this time. We won't. We always progress. And Léon Denis in chapter 11, which is part 2, he talks about reincarnation. And we love his questions. He begins by asking, how does immortal life develop? And what is, in fact, the life of the souls? In order to answer these questions, one must go back to the beginning and analyze the problem of the existences as a whole. So he goes on and on and on and on, and he tells us that each one of our earthly existences represents only one episode in our immortal life. Well, nowadays we go to Netflix, we go to TV, and everything's in episodes. So here's a good understanding about ourselves. This incarnation that you and I are living now is one episode, but what an episode, huh? With the pandemic and everything. Very different from previous ones, for sure. Yes, very different. This reincarnation is the most important. Why? We've never been this evolved. Think about it. If you look at yourself in the mirror, when I look at myself in the mirror, some people, as a psychologist, some people tell me, I can't look at myself in the mirror, Vanessa. I say, well, let's change the way you look at yourself in the mirror then. What do you look for when you look at yourself in the mirror? Oh, I look at my wrinkles. Yeah, that's hard. I would agree. Because if you look, as Mentor Joseph said to us once, Vanessa, if you spend too much time looking at the physical, the wrinkles, you're going to start thinking about Botox, plastic surgery, and things that may be useful, but probably you don't need it for now. Maybe later one day if you want, but now, come on. But look deeper. What deeper, Vanessa? And then people keep asking me, like, how deeper? Vanessa, but if I look at myself in the eyes, sometimes I see fear. Sometimes I see guilt. I don't approve of myself. You know why? You're not seeing yourself as your true self. And then they ask, what do you mean? Well, you're a child of God. Look at yourself as God's creation, God's artwork, masterpiece, because you're unique. There's nobody like you in this universe. We've never heard. I know people create stories about parallel universes in the sense of like, there's a part of us somewhere else. Friends, imagination is beautiful, but we have reasoning. We need to use reasoning, okay? Science has not proved anything of that to us. And our reasoning feels like, it feels to us that the reasoning is not going to follow through. And then it's just imagination. What we're talking about is you and I in this universe being unique, a masterpiece of the Creator, all of us, all in each, every one of us. We, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we're seeing the divine in us. I'm seeing somebody who has evolved through many lives, death, and then afterlife, and then again, reincarnation, born and reborn yet again, and constantly progressing. This is us. It's the law. Yes. So we're evolving. So when I look at myself in the mirror, I see, wow, you've evolved. Good job. Let's do some more. There's always more to refine, not in the sense of imperfection. It's as if you were, and I'll show you something, okay? Because I like to draw flowers. So I was drawing this flower. And it's as if I am looking at this flower and I see the others that are unfinished. I won't look at it and feel like, oh, this is so imperfect. I'll say, oh, let me continue working on it. So then I'm going to go there, take my color pencil, and continue working on it. This is what Léon Denis and Kardec are bringing to us. We are God's artwork. By the way, did you know that art is a big part of our lives? We spiritists focus so much on the intellect, but we forget that at least half of us, as neuroscience says, Michael Gazzaniga, the neuroscientist who brought to us the lateralization of our brains, showing how specific each hemisphere of our brains are in terms of modulating abilities. And art is a big part of it. And sometimes we are incomplete because we're not maximizing our potential. You don't need to be an artist, but open yourself to the arts. Many people, they talk about being depressed and anxious. Sometimes it's because part of their abilities are blocked. Léon Denis wrote a whole book about spiritism in the arts. He is the one leading that movement to really harmonize with Victor Hugo, as Divaldo Franco says, and other spirits, to bring a new renaissance to the planet Earth in terms of arts, with spirituality. As we say, according to those spirits, in the Spiritist side of Virginia, the mentors say, it's art for the good now. Like Humberto de Campos said in the preface of the book Good News, I no longer write to please, because he was a writer, a renowned writer, from the Brazilian Academy, yes, of literature. But he says now that my heart beats differently for the teachings of Christ consciousness. I write with a purpose to be useful, to console. So no longer the arts to express our craziness, but the arts that bring harmony. Léon Denis talks about it in the other book. And here, just at a glance, he's going to tell us of the feeling of reincarnating many times. It's one episode now, and we'll need more to develop other abilities in us, including the artistic part of us. After all, we're co-creators. We have this inner creativity. When people tell me, I'm not creative, we say, are you sure? Because you are a co-creator. Yes, find the divine in you and allow it to bring out the purpose of life, chapter 12. When he talks about our destinies, he says, our destinies are all identical. So why do you compete? Why do you worry about competing with people? If at the end of the day, we're all going to reach the finish line, which is not an end, no, but this climax of unity with the supreme intelligence in terms of our consciousness. He continues, there is no such thing as privileged or cursed people. Don't you love Léon Denis? I love him just for that. We need more of this. He's saying there's no such thing as privileged or cursed people. So when I look at somebody like Michael Phelps in Baltimore, Maryland, the greatest Olympian of all Olympians, the swimmer, as an athlete, he surpassed all the records. I don't look at him and say, oh, lucky you and Michael Phelps. He's going to say, Vanessa, I skipped many parties to train 8 hours a day. I had to train my life around it. There's no privilege. Of course, he had some inner abilities, right? He was born with something in him, and yet he had to sweat. But we know that these inborn abilities, they come from previous lives. It's a continuation. When I see a Nobel Peace Prize awardee, I remember meeting one of them, not only because in neuroscience we have some, and Eric Kandel, one of the main neuroscientists, remember meeting him and talking to him. very down to earth. I look at him as somebody who has been reincarnating, working as scientist. And in this life, he had the mission to discover something very, very particular that would change humanity's discoveries and understanding about itself. I don't look at him with envy. I look at him as somebody who has been sweating for it, for lives, and in this life really was a crowning moment. I don't know the next episode of his life, but I don't envy this one. I bless him. As Sister Sheila says in a message through Chico Xavier, bless it always and all the time. I bless, I don't envy, I don't feel spite, I don't compete. Because Léon Denis says, our destinies are identical. Yes. Everyone has to go through the same path and must achieve the same ends, overcoming thousands of obstacles. Mhm. And he goes on and on talking about the importance and the justice of reincarnation. Sovereign justice rules over the worlds by the law of reincarnation. Yes, you and I have been reincarnating out of God's mercy, which is united with justice. And in this second part, he's going to talk about the inevitable, the tests, the trials. And he says all the harms in life contribute to our improvement. Yesterday, talking to a person, they said, you know what I've heard? That since the pandemic started, in some countries, people created some new words, new terms because of the pandemic. And now we have an increased, expanded vocabulary. Not only that, but in the science of vaccine alone, we're seeing a boost like we've never seen before. We know it's tough to go through the trials, but what are we learning with it? And this is the analogy that Kardec brings to us in his books. Léon Denis confirms, and it makes sense to you and I. Why are we here? As Janet Duncan said very wisely once, reincarnation is not a vacation. Incarnation is not a vacation. We're not here. Some people wake up thinking, oh my gosh, I have to go to work. And they only smile when they are on vacation. And we would say, what is it all about? Forgive us to say this, but psychologically, it's a symptom of laziness. And we have to work on it. In the spiritualist literature, we see many spirit authors reminding us about the dangers of laziness, the least effort. When we take shortcuts, when we're dreaming, we work all year long thinking of a vacation. No. We are here to enjoy the work. Really? Really. Even things you don't like, Vanessa, yeah, you need to find a way to like it. When I do laundry, I don't have anybody to do laundry for me. I have to do laundry. I was doing laundry before starting this. Yeah, because this is life, right? Family life. I was there working. And I said, thank God I have my arms. Thank God I have health. Thank God I can walk. Thank God I can easily go here, load it, unload it, fold it. And when I fold it, see, when we bring love into our daily chores, Mary Kondo, go to Netflix or YouTube and watch. Adorable. What a missionary. She teaches us to fold our clothes with love. This is not romantic. It's actually practical because you're doing two things in one. Instead of wondering, oh my gosh, I still need to do this. And then when you wear that, you're wearing all the energy you put in that folded clothing. Now we're going to fold with love. And if you don't use it, she says, bless it and give it away. Don't keep it if it doesn't bring you joy. So it's good, the minimalist movement, teaching us to trim down. We open our things. Oh my gosh, I don't have enough. No, no, no. Think. How many people can you clothe? Where can you help wearing this? 10, 1,000. So please, you have more than enough because you're just one person. We understand that it varies according to profession. Some people need a different car because of their business. They need a different house because of their business. It's understandable. But the unnecessary, the superfluous. Léon Denis talks about this. In the book, in the third part of the book, he's going to tell us about the invisible world. And he's going to tell us about the things that you and I want to know. He's going to remind us about the fact that we're spirits, we communicate with other spirits without noticing, and then the choices we make in life are going to impact every day. For example, the choice that I make to be selfish or selfless is going to impact the network that I have. You and I have a spiritual network, and you may be asking, who is in my spiritual network? Let me see in the phone. No, it's not only in the phone, it's beyond the phone. Who is in our network? Kardec asked this question, and the answer of the spirits is 4 different types of spirits. In your spiritual network, in mine, as Léon Denis is going to say here in part 3, when he talks about mediums, he's talking about this interaction with the spiritual realm. He's going to remind us that we connect with other minds. Who are they? First type of spirit that is in our connections, the network. Protecting spirits, guardian angels, they are always superior to us, always connected to us. The question is, are we connected to them? We need to log in. How do you log in? How do I log in? Praying? Maybe. It depends. If I pray and then I continue to be selfish, the connection went off. To sustain, logged in, I need to do good works, and only Spiritism tells us about it. The importance of reaching out all the time through words, through thoughts, through feelings, through actions. Second type of spirits that are with us, familiar spirits. Spirits who like us, who know us. They may be more evolved or less evolved. The third type, sympathetic spirits. The ones that are with us for affinity. They like what we like. We like Spiritism. They're here connected to us. They like cooking. They'll be there with us. They like eating. They'll be there with us. Read André Luiz books through Chico Xavier. We're going to see in the book Between Heaven and Earth. Yes. And some other books. Not only that, but we're going to see the scenes of the family gathering together and 6 other spirits eating with the family. We're not alone, ever. And the fourth type of spirit, the obsessors, which are usually to be blamed for everything wrong that happens in our lives, but it's not true. Because we have a whole network that influences us. As Kardec learned and shared with us in the Spirit's book, chapter 9, Intervention of the Spirit, second part, the spirits influence us more than we imagine. If we imagine this much, it's always more. Always more. So that's why we need to know more of ourselves. So bring our attention to Léon Denis' book After Death, because there you and I will know more about ourselves and live better. In part 4, he's going to explain about the world beyond. He's going to talk about justice, solidarity, responsibility, free will, which is huge. In science alone, it's a big discussion about, especially neuroscience, how do we explain free will? Does it really exist? If we're just the brain, where does free will take place? Science cannot understand it yet. Judgment, are we going to be judged? During the pandemic, we're discarnating, people are discarnating, and we're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? This part of the book reminds us of the last part of the book, the Spirit's book by Kardec, when he talks about hopes and consolations. And at the very end, in 1019 question and answers, at the very, very end, 1014, 16, 17, we're going to see the explanation about what heaven, hell, and purgatory is all about. Nobody's created evil. Nobody. There are no demons. But who are we? And Léon Denis will answer to us that question. Exactly, they're talking about the superior life and the inferior spirits. And in the last part of this book, which is, forgive me to say it, I know my personal opinion doesn't matter, because when we talk about the spirit is science, what I feel, what I think doesn't matter. Science is science. But I will share with you because we're just so human. The fifth part of this book is simply phenomenal. Years ago, in 2015, we released the series of this chapter, 15 chapters in the fifth part of the book After Death, where Léon Denis crowns the book. He seals with a golden key. He closes that book, telling about the pathway to happiness. You want to know the pathway to happiness? Read this book, especially the fifth part. He begins here in chapter 42, and it's a delight. He talks about how important it is to lead a life with moral principles, a word that has been corrupted, and now people have an aversion. Don't talk about morality. And look at what's happening in the world, because we're not educating anymore. We're just giving instruction to our kids. And not even families are now providing safe guidelines in terms of moral principles to their children. Spiritism brings the past. Léon Denis leads us into a beautiful understanding about the moral life. But he brings us in such a way, listen to this, how blissful are the humans who in this life full of darkness and pitfalls march constantly toward the elevated goal they know and discern, and from which they are certain. How blissful are those who are inspired in their work and prompted forward by a breath from above. They remain indifferent to pleasures. Neither the temptations of the flesh nor the deceptive glitters of fortune have any empire on them. Like travelers on the way, they are called all, and they hurry along to reach it. And then he continues talking about duty. And then he talks about faith, hope, consolations. He goes on talking about pride, wealth, and poverty. And then selfishness, charity, and patience, goodness, love. I'm gonna stop in this chapter, chapter 49. Love. How important is love for you in your life? We've come to a cynic society where when we speak love or talk about love, it's such an abused word that we no longer know what it is. But Léon Denis redefines love like I've never seen before. Love, he says, is the celestial attraction of the souls and worlds, the divine power that bonds, governs, and fertilizes the universe. Love is God's gaze. He redefined it. One should never embellish with this name the ardent passion inspired by carnal desires. Love No, he says, is the supreme sentiment in which all the qualities of the heart mingle and harmonize. The antidote to the pandemic is love. That's the vaccine that we need. We need a movement on love. Be more loving at home. Sarcasm is sour. In the Spiritist literature, we have Casimiro Cunha through Chico Xavier in a book that we read and studied at Kardec Radio, Drops of Light. Sarcasm is sour. We have a sense of humor nowadays that if you are not sarcastic, people don't laugh anymore. You're not funny. But then we're sick. Life becomes bittersweet because we enjoy it and at the same time, it's strange. We need to rescue love. We need to bring love back to our lives. Right, Faye Arias, Monica Mullen, thank you for bringing us your love as well, right, John Da Rosa? Seeing friends here, it's irresistible. I can't resist. Mackenzie Mello, what a beautiful group of friends here all together. Thank you, friends. That's what we need. And Léon Denis, we listened to him. And now I'm going to conclude this moment because I know we have questions and comments. I'm going to conclude this moment when he says something to you and I. If you read this book, and I'll show you his picture that I only have in the Portuguese version. Look at this picture. I love this picture of Léon Denis. He looks like a grandfather to me, doesn't he? And when I see him, and I'm using the books instead of the slides because we need to hold the books. We need to bring the books back to our lives. He says, and you who are reading these pages, whoever you might be sure that we will meet someday, either in this world during future existences or in a more advanced sphere or even in the immensity of spaces, that we are intended to influence one another in the path of good and to help each other in our common ascent. We, children of God, members of the great family of the spirits who carry the sign of immortality on our brow, we're destined to know each other, to bond in the holy harmony of the laws and things, far from the passions and deceiving splendors of the earth. Until this day comes, may my thought reach you, O brother or sister, as a token of gentle friendship. May it sustain you in your doubts, comfort you in your pains. May it uplift you in your weaknesses, and may it join your own voice for us to abid our common Father, help in order to conquer a better future. Léon Denis, after death. We feel it in our hearts, and that's what we need. We need love, and Léon Denis giving his love to us. I'm going to put a pause here and open for the questions, Adam, or comments.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Vanessa. That's a really great explanation about this book. We do have a couple of small questions coming in, but let's just wait for people to send in questions and comments they have. But we'd like to say hello to Lee, John, Angela, Elsa, Linda, Gisela, Tiago, Arthur, Val, Jader, Maria and Miria. So many people from Sao Paulo, Lithuania, London, Texas, Oxford, Chicago, Eckenbach in Germany, Holland. So many places joining us right now to listen about hear about this wonderful book from the French philosopher Léon Denis. And definitely anyone who looks for his photo on Google or wherever, you'll find a great photo of him with this nice long white beard. It's wonderful, wonderful. So there are a couple of things which I picked up on. Absolutely. So you mentioned about Sacramento Museum. Now, Sacramento where?
Yeah, Minas Gerais, Brazil, not
Yeah.
in California. We said it's in the state of Chico Xavier. You
Yeah.
know, when you look at the state of Minas Gerais, it's like it's almost like a rectangle, I'll say quote unquote. On the right side to the east is where Chico Xavier was born, Peter Leopoldo. And then he moved to the west in the what would we call the Minas Gerais Triangle. And then we have these three main cities, including Sacramento, and then Uberaba in
Mhm.
Uberlândia, Uberaba, where Chico Xavier ended up dying and lived most part of his life as well. And then Sacramento is still a small city, but the city where Euripides Barçanufo was born
Yeah.
and left a legacy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's easily available. If people want to search for that on Google, you can find it there. Um, and where Leon Denis is talking about all the different aspects of spirituality around the world, we can see great parallels with that to Kardec's own research, which he has in Revue Spirit, the Spiritist Review. Because you have to remember, Kardec himself went to school in Switzerland. He was studying with people from all over the world. Now, I don't know if this is the same book that John is asking about. Please talk about the other title.
Yes, you see, John the Rose, and we were just talking about you. I was about your recording of the Spirit's Book at Kardec Radio with Steve Shepard, was mentioning to Adam. And John is also a host at Kardec Radio, a member of the Spirit Side of Virginia, good friend. And I know John, he loves this book. After that, he loves Léon Denis. And the subtitle says Scientific and Rational Solution to the Problems of Life and Death, Nature and Destiny of the Human Being, Successive Lives. Really, it's so interesting because Léon Denis, like Kardec, he gave us the subtitles always to give some more direction. And here is a summary about what this book is all about. And we need it, right, Adam? We need direction for our lives, especially nowadays during this pandemic. Many people are lost in the basic things. But when we have an alignment, we can easily decipher the next steps of our lives. And I'll give just a comment here because of the vaccination process. Like in the US, you have a system where you can go there and say who you are and find out if you are eligible to be vaccinated now or later. So let's say if you could cheat, you could say, oh yes, I am a community leader, and you could go, in front of many people who probably need it more than us. With Spiritism, I know the answer. I know I shouldn't go there. If I am not at the front lines, I'm not really there, I should allow people who are and wait, because I know many people who are trying to cheat the system because they want to go free, fly, travel. But here's the news: it prevents, but not 100%. So don't cheat the system. The moral life that Leon Denis saying to us, that this book helps us with decisions like that as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think definitely the aspect of reincarnation that Spiritism brings to light helps us to understand why we need to follow the rules. There's something that you mentioned about, we don't always know the next episode of life, and we have a message here from Mackenzie Mello. What wonderful reminders to all of us you brought. I love the analogy you made with Netflix and episodes we all live.
Yes. Oh, Mackenzie. I love Mackenzie's. He's a philosopher to me. I love the way he brings the understanding. And you're right. when we talked about Netflix and episodes, if you watch a series, each episode, depending on the series, of course, but it's bringing a lot of information in our lives are so important. It's defining the next lives. I don't know, but I can almost foresee if I go back to Andrew Lewis books, for example, the book And Life Goes On. I love that book because it shows to us how a decision that a man made when he was a young adult, he was not in his 50s yet. He, and I am not saying that we who are getting close to the 50s, we're not young, we're still young, but he was younger than that. And he made a decision to take the wealth of his future mother in law, claiming that he was going to help, but he kept it all. And the spirits were like, oh my gosh, she's stealing. And the spirit said, don't worry, because she's going to discarnate, reincarnate as his daughter in 30 years from now. The spirits already knew. In 30 years from that moment, he was going to discarnate and the whole wealth was going to go back to her and even more. Showing to us that the decisions we're making right now are defining exactly what's going to happen next. So, people, Adam, often they focus on reincarnation on the perspective of looking at the past.
Yeah.
What have I done? No, 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 no. We need to focus on now, the sowing now for the future. Not everything that happens today is karma. And I say quote unquote karma in the sense of an expiation, as we say in Spiritism. Sometimes they are tests, trials, because this is the nature of our planet, marching towards regeneration. But the main decision, and I want to disclose an information that we got in our mediumistic meeting this past Monday, when the mentors, through Mentor Joseph, said, if you want to make things right, read item 16 of chapter 3 of the Gospel According to Spiritism, the description about the regenerative worlds, getting to know about what we're marching to, and then make decisions according to those standards. Because if we do it now, we're going to ace at it. If we don't, we're still going to be slippery. We don't go back, but we don't move forward as either, right?
Yeah, I think we've got a question here from Lee Smith, which sort of follows on to that. When we reincarnate, I want to keep studying. How can we leave a note for ourselves to make sure we continue?
Oh, wow. What a precious question, Leah. Wow. Everything Léon Denis says in the book After Death about the perispirit. That's where we write everything we do and we think and we feel. And everything, like the promises we make, they are registered there. I know Dr. Américo Canhoto, who is a wonderful spiritist physician in Brazil, the other day he was writing a message about this, saying that many people made promises in previous lives that is creating some stagnation in this life. I know people who say, in the next life, I'll be this, I'll do that, as if they are cursing themselves. Don't do this because it's a program. You are imprinting in your own memory field because we register everything in our perispirit. Kardec says it in the Genesis. Léon Denis reinforces in the book After Death. In the perispirit, we write a note. And there, of course, according to the designs of God, if it's God's will, we will go on. But we can write a note in that way in our own perispiritual memory.
Yeah.
Makes sense, right?
Oh, for me, absolutely. Let's hope that that's useful for everyone else. And again, anyone watching who wants to know more about Spiritism, please make sure you contact BUS or Kardec Radio or any institute near you, and I'm sure everyone will be willing to help to understand more about what Spiritism says about reincarnation itself. Comment here from John. We did show it quickly, but we'll show it again just now. if and when one reads Léon Denis, then one will fall in love with how he writes and understand why Spiritism is a rational faith and science.
Said it all.
Yeah, exactly. Kardec and Léon Denis are fantastic researchers, authors, so much that we can learn from them. Okay, well, I think that's about it for now. We've been just over an hour so far. So thank you, Vanessa, for that wonderful talk. We do have a couple of announcements on behalf of BUS. Let me just bring them up. The first one is to invite everyone to register for the 8th British Congress on Medicine and Spirituality, Health for the Third Millennium, which will be taking place online on May 22nd. And Vanessa is going to be one of the lecturers at that event, along with Dr. Peter Fenwick, Dr. Alessandro Morea, Dr. Tanya Stevanin, Dr. Natalie Toba, and Dr. Sonia Doy. And this is being organized by the British Spiritist Medical Association, BUS, and the and AMI International. So please make sure you come along to that, and also to invite everyone to next month's Léon Denis talk, which will be with Humberto Schubert from Brazil, who'll be talking about another book which was mentioned, Spiritism in the Arts, which again, a fantastic book.
Yeah.
So again, thank you very much for being with us today, Vanessa.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. It was very moving. It was nourishment for me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's just time for me to say thank you so much for everyone who's joined us via the British Union of Spiritist Society, the Irish Spiritist Federation, Kardec Radio and Kardec Group Facebook and YouTube channels. Please make sure you stay safe, stay well, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon.